Good morning. Happy Sabbath. Technology is already failing me this morning. My little clicker is not working, so I had to bring my computer over here where I can get to it. I think Jack must have sabotaged it. I'm not going to say who got me up here this morning, but let me say this. If you're ever sitting there and you see Joy coming at you, and she's got them eyes, I now know what a lion's prey feels like when they look and they see the lion. She asked me about 3 weeks ago to speak, and it takes me about a week to just sit and think, what am I going to do? So then that gives me another week to kind of put it together. I'm still changing things. And finally, well, it's been hot. It's been miserably hot. And you come home and you don't feel like doing nothing else. And there's things I have to do to take care of the business and keep it running. Last night, I finally got to sit down about 8:30. I was getting ready for the Sabbath. And I thought, this is my chance to finish it. So it wasn't even done. And I sit down and the phone rings. And I look at the number and I thought, man, that's familiar. So I answer the phone. Well, it's my wife. Hey, what are you doing? I said, I just sit down to work on my sermon. She said, oh. I said, what do you need? I thought she might have left her lunch or something. She works at the emergency room. Part-time, she was there last night. And she said, well, there's this little man. He come in, they bring him in. He's not had nothing to eat. And they've given him some food here, but he's not had nothing to eat in days. I don't know if she added that part or not. But she said, he has no way home. The ambulance will not take him home. They bring him here, but he don't qualify. The sheriff's department is busy. Can you come and take him home? He lives in Spring City. And I sat there for a minute. I said, I'm working on my sermon. She said, oh, okay. Real pitiful. And I thought, what would Jesus do? So I said, okay. Now she said, oh, that's great. Now okay, see you in a minute. Call me when you get here. Click. She done knew what I was going to say. She had done it before. I had to take somebody to Chattanooga. So anyway, I hope everything's in order. I got up early this morning. And sometimes these things can be hard to put together, but I want to serve the Lord in the best that I can do. Now, I want to go back to God, are you real? I was asked this morning, is this going to be about honeybees? And the answer is no, but I do have something. Now, some of you might not care nothing for the first part. I know one of us will. And I would like to participate in this also. But anyway, let's get started. Cheers went up from several hundred engineers, designers, team members, mechanics, and Air Force officials watching for the ramp, plus the 5,000 or so interested people looking on from behind the fence at the end of the runway as the Raptor 4001, the first F-22 air dominance fighter, took to the skies for the first time on September 7th, 1997. After nearly 44,000 wind tunnel hours, 13,000 material sample tests, 6 years of development, the F-22 was finally airborne. The maiden flight was the first of 3,496 flights and 7,616 test hours to come in the F-22's engineering and manufacturing development phase. The Air Force would declare the F-22 operational in 2005. It can soar 10 miles high and fly at supersonic speeds for extended periods of time. It can accelerate quickly and execute razor-sharp turns, even at high speeds. It is equipped with stealth technology that enables it to appear virtually undetected by radar. The F-22 Raptor is considered to be the best air superiority aircraft in the world. It is designed to provide total air dominance with little to no compromise. In fact, no current or planned fighter aircraft can match it. And the F-22 Raptor is in fact so good that the United States has banned exports of the aircraft. The Mach 2.25 speed for the F-22 Raptor means that it's capable of flying over twice as fast as the speed of sound. The maximum speed of the F-22 Raptor is about 1,500 miles per hour. This is about 2,526 feet every second. We as humans can build some impressive machines. How can we be so smart but yet believe a lie? The number of Americans who believe in God has dropped to historic lows. Hello, God, are you there? Do you really exist? How can I believe if you don't talk to me? Have you ever asked these questions? Do you have a friend who asks the questions? God does answer. There's such a push for God not to be real. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your what? All your heart. So you have to look with all your heart. You're supposed to have sound. I'm not sure why you don't. The Anna's hummingbird, now believed to be the fastest bird in the world relative to its size, can reach speeds of 50 miles per hour, or nearly 385 body lengths per second. That may seem slow compared to the F-22's top speed of 1,500 miles per hour, but even at that speed, the jet manages to cover just 42 body lengths per second. Did you hear me? That's 385 body lengths per second for the Hummingbird and 42 for the F-22. And relative to its size, it is almost 9 times faster than the F-22. The Hummingbird can reach 10G acceleration as it pulls out of its dive, trying to attract its mate. The average person will go night-night when it hits 4 to 5 negative Gs. And a fighter pilot can be trained to endure up to 9 Gs. Hummingbirds are the only bird to fly backwards and upside down for brief periods. Hummingbird can fly non-stop for about 500 miles. The F-22 will burn 8,000 pounds of fuel to fly 500 miles. This is the only animal known to migrate solo. The hummingbirds regularly visit about 1,000 flowers per day, and remember, every flower they visit and know when to return to that flower. Hummingbirds consume about twice their body weight in nectar each day. Hummingbirds live about 2 to 5 years. In flight, a hummingbird's heart will pump 1,200 beats per minute. When not in flight, about 250 beats per minute. Asleep, a hummingbird can slow its heart rate to 50 beats per minute and its body temperature to 40 to 50 degrees. Hummingbirds are the world's smallest warm-blooded animal. They don't have insulated feathers commonly found in other birds. Hummingbirds are known as flying jewels because they can change their feathers' color in flight. A hummingbird's brilliant throat color is not caused from feather pigmentation, but rather by in the arrangement of the feathers. Light levels, moisture, angle of viewing, wear and tear, and other factors all influence just how bright the color of the throat may appear. Hummingbirds cannot walk or hop, though their feet can use to scoot sideways as they are perched. Hummingbirds have no sense of smell, but have very keen eyesight. In addition to their nectar, these birds eat many small insects and spiders. I didn't know that. And may also sip tree sap or juice from broken fruits. A hummingbird can lick 10 to 15 times per second while feeding. There are more than 300 unique hummingbird species in the world, and they only live in America. Of the 300, only about 17 hummingbird species actually regularly breed in the United States. The average ruby-throated hummingbird weighs just 3 grams in comparison to a nickel weight of 4.5 grams. It would take more than 150 ruby-throated hummingbirds to weigh 1 pound. Did you hear that? That's 4.5 grams will get you 500 miles. An F-22 burns 8,000 pounds of fuel. The F-22 might be the most advanced fighter jet in the world, but it holds no comparison to God's creation when compared side by side. Was that as good as the bees? God's creation is amazing. These are pictures that I took of my hummingbirds. And they are absolutely beautiful. If you notice the throat, and I believe that is the male. And generally they are guarding that feeder. They like that feeder. And they are very, very beautiful to watch. You can even get them to land on your finger if you're still. And once they realize that you're not a threat. This morning, this is what time is it? This is not about Moses taking the staff and parting the Red Sea. Did he part the Red Sea? He did? God did, that's right. This is not about Noah building that big boat. Did Noah build the big boat? He did build the boat. Where in the world did he get the knowledge to build that boat? Come from God. Do you know that they use them same mathematical principles to build their boats that they do today? The length and the width. And this is not about God's love. Nope. This is about what time is it? And we're going to look at the red heifer, part 2. But first, we're going to do something different. We're going to go to history. Y'all remember 1812? I don't either. But however, the War of 1812, June 18th, 1812, February 17th, 1815, conflict fought between the United States and Great Britain over British violations of U.S. maritime rights. The War of 1812 was financed mainly through the use of borrowed funds. Total public debt increased from $45.2 million on January 1st, 1812 to $119.2 million as of September 30, 1815. 1837, y'all remember 1837, right? Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States, was suspicious of what? Banks. Should we be suspicious of banks? And did not trust the paper money they issued. In 1837, he liquidated the Second Bank of the United States, returning the government's original investment plus a profit. This resulted in a huge government surplus of funds. In 1835, the $17.9 million budget surplus was greater than the total government expense for that year. For the first and only time, all of the government's interest-bearing debits was paid off. Congress distributed the surplus to the states, many of which were heavily in debt. The Jackson administration ended with the country almost completely out of debt. 1844. Y'all remember 1844? You do? Okay, well, the Peacemaker, the largest naval gun in the world, exploded during demonstration aboard the USS Princeton on the Potomac River, killing 6, including the Secretary of the State and the Secretary of the Navy. Oh, that's not what you wanted to see on 1844, is it? The great disappointment in the Millerite movement was the reaction that followed Baptist preacher William Miller's proclamation that Jesus Christ would return to the earth by 1844, which he called the Second Advent. And we went over that in one of our other sermons. The U.S. debit was $23.5 million. These numbers are interesting, so keep these in mind. 1846, the United States went to war with Mexico in May 1846 over the annexation of Texas and California. A lot of people died in that war, but we should have just let them have California. But the end of 1849, public debt totaled $63.1 million. 1929. Have you studied 1929? The panic? Through the 1920s, the federal budget surplus got as high as $689 million. Total debt was gradually reduced from $24 billion to about $17 billion. But businesses actually began to decline in the summer of 1929, and the stock market crash followed in October. By the early 1930s, it was apparent that a major economic crisis was in progress. President Hoover tried to balance the budget, and FDR continued this after being elected in 1932. But bad times forced the deficit up as public works efforts to offset financial hardship were funded. By 1933, the budget deficit was nearly $3 billion, and the debit had risen to more than $22 billion. 1945. Anybody remember 1945? 1945, some of us know, some of us may not. The end of World War II. And so, my fellow American, I ask you to demonstrate again your faith in America by joining me in investing Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1941. It has been estimated that the total government expenditure during World War II were $323 billion. The effort to fight the war required a total mobilization of the financial resources of the United States. It is doubtful that any citizen was untouched by the war effort. This put great pressure on the physical agencies of the government, by 1945, defense expenditures would be 15 times what they were the physical year 1941. Approximately $211 billion of the estimated $323 billion spent fighting the war was borrowed. Treasury attempted with much success to manage this borrowing while minimizing its impacts on the economy. 1999. I know we're starting to remember some of this. Remember this one? Remember Y2K? The world was coming to an end. Now, if you're the Christian, that just didn't fit. And I remember that very well, and I wondered, was the world coming to an end? Notice, in about 55 years, we have jumped to $5.5 trillion. 2001. What happened in 2001? Where was you in 9/11? Do y'all remember where you was when you found that out? I got the call. I worked second shift and got the call, and Sonia said, go look at the TV. And I was in shock at what happened. So we went to $5.8 trillion. Now, we looked last time at what $1 trillion. $1 trillion is an enormous amount of money. Enormous. 2008. Y'all remember 2008? 2008 didn't really get me, but 2010 is when it hit around here. The stock market crash of 2008 was the biggest single-day drop in history at that point. The aftermath of the catastrophic financial event wiped out big chunks of Americans' retirement savings and affected the economy long after the stock market recovered. Some people jumped out windows. They couldn't take what had happened. And who was at fault? The big banks, the one that they liquidated. And one person went to jail. From 2001 to 2008, almost $4 trillion to $10 trillion. 2020, January 1st, one of the worst fire seasons in Australian history continues as thousands of people evacuated and millions of acres burnt. Do y'all remember seeing the little furry animals that had been burnt? It's pitiful. January 15th, the U.S. House votes to send articles of impeachment, abuse of power, and obstruction of Congress against President Trump to the U.S. Senate. The World Health Organization declares the COVID-19 outbreak a public health emergency and international concern on the 30th of January 2020. The U.S. debit in 2020 rose to $26.5 trillion. 2021. In January, Joe Biden was inaugurated as our 46th president. Violent supporters of President Trump breached the U.S. Capitol at a joint session of Congress to count the electoral votes and affirm President-elect Joe Biden win was underway. The withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan after a 2-decade-old war. That was interesting what happened there. The vacuum of us leaving brought in the other side. The U.S. debit rose to $29.5 trillion. 2022, we're getting close to home. Inflation surges. Y'all affected by that? I seen a picture on Facebook the other day of somebody saying, look what inflation done to me. I can carry $150 worth of groceries in one hand. COVID-19 Omicron's running around. Russia invades Ukraine on February 24th, leading to a global crisis. The U.S. Supreme Court overturns abortion rights. Record-breaking heat wave. droughts around the world, flooding in Pakistan, population exceeds 8 billion people. COP27 and the 10 Commandments. Do y'all remember that? They want to bring back the 10 Commandments. U.S. debit, $30.8 trillion. 2023. What is in the news? Trump. Now we've heard all this stuff, wars, and this, and that, and this, and that. What is different? Have you ever heard this about a president before? Never. Never. In fact, Donald Trump's legal web has grown more tangled than ever. The former president is facing 91 criminal charges across the jurisdictions: Georgia, Florida, New York, and the District of Columbia. He has 2 trial dates set for 2024 so far, and all this unfolds as he runs for the president again. Is this not interesting? He's looking at 700 years in jail. Now, I don't want to be a supporter or a push for Trump, and I need to be looking the other way. But for some reason, I just can't help it. And I want to dig into politics, but should I dig into politics? I should not. We have Biden. Who knows James Comer? Who's heard of him? Anybody? James Comer? Anybody else? You don't hear about that on the news, do you? It's not there. However, Trump did this, Trump did that, Trump did this. This is so interesting, and I don't want to get into the politics of this, but this is something we have never seen before, ever. The FBI, the Department of Justice, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, then you have the Fox network, and the IRS is all involved. Now back to Joe Biden. There is a push to cover this up for some reason. Are they hiding something? Who is telling the truth? Does it matter to you? Does it matter at all? Is God playing in politics? Or is Satan in politics? The U.S. debit has rose to $32.6 trillion. By 2027, estimates put the U.S. debit at $46.5 trillion. Fitch Rating lowered the country's credit rating to a AA+ from its AAA, citing the ballooning U.S. debit load and a weakening of governance. On top of that, Fitch expects the U.S. to enter a recession later this year, the agency said. I want you to look at something. This is every 10 years. This is the U.S. debit. Notice these are just, in 1932, these are just speed bumps. Okay? But when you get down to 1992, it's kind of a wall in 2002. But when it gets to 2012, can you get over that wall? You couldn't get over them walls with a helicopter, I don't think. And if you jump to the estimated 10 years at 2032, is estimated to be $62 trillion. That is enormous. The U.S. debit to GDP ratio. If you went to the bank, I'm going to pick on Joy. Joy's the banker. Joy, I come into the bank and I say, hey, I want to apply for this loan. She said, well, what is your debit to income ratio? Well, I'm at 125%. 125%? Are you going to loan? But I promise to pay the money back, Joy. I promise. Can I get the loan? Friends, what's this look like? Are they realizing that it can't be paid back and just keep going? Is the financial system on a course for something catastrophic? It is, isn't it? Look at it like this. As it's come down the hill, it was a snowball, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And this ball is so big. What happens when it gets too big? The weight of the ball is it's going to tear itself apart. And then you've got this stuff with the presidency. I don't know how y'all see it, but if Biden wins again, is there going to be trouble? If Trump wins again, is there going to be trouble? You know, you got the heads of government in here that are looking, man, he's going to fire us if he gets in there. He's going to start digging and looking at the things we've done. Have they done it? I don't know. I don't want to push for that side. I don't want to push for Trump. The bigger point is what is happening. You have never seen this before. And then we go to the other side of the world, and we got the red heifer. Y'all remember the red heifer when we went over it? What's that guy doing? He's looking for imperfections in this cow. Is it perfect? Let's quickly go over Numbers 19, 1 through 10. Again, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, this is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come, and you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and it shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his fingers and sprinkle some of its blood towards the front of the tent of the meeting 7 times, and the heifer shall burn in his sight. Its skin, its flesh, and its blood with its dung shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet and yarn and throw them into the fire, burning the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. But the priest shall be unclean until evening. The one who burns the heifer shall wash his clothes in water and bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean until evening. And a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and deposit them outside the camp in a clean place, and they shall be kept for the water of impurity for the congregation of the people of Israel. It is a sin offering, and the one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. And it shall be a perpetual statute for the people of Israel and for the stranger who adjoins them. So who's looking for the red heifer? Israel is looking for the red heifer. Now again, you have a snowballing economy on this side of the world. Something catastrophic is going to happen. It's going to be replaced with something. It has to be, for them to take away your power to buy and sell. They can't do that with cash, in my eyes. Me and Mike, we could still do business on the side, right, if we had cash? But what if that cash is stripped out and the cash is worthless. Can we do business then? No, not unless I got something you want. And $100 bill, if it's worthless, who's going to want it? So you got this happening on this side of the world. You got the presidency thing happening. But then you got Israel on the other side. And what are they doing? The red heifer sacrifice could take place in 1 year in Jerusalem. A plot of land on the Mount of Olives has been purchased and is ready for a valid sacrifice. The first since the destruction of the second temple. Texas businessman Byron Stinson, the man instrumental in locating and helping get how many? 5 red heifers from the United States to Israel. Again, you got this happening over in America. An economy going to crash, maybe. Something happens. And this big fight between the government. And on this side, they've got a red heifer and they want to do a sacrifice. Well, wait a second. There's not been a red heifer in how many years? Does anybody know? About 2,000 years. So you got this going on over here, which we've never seen before. You know, the news comes up and goes down, comes up, and it's pretty interesting. But when we get here, we're in uncharted territory. Economy that's going to crash, and all of a sudden, you've got 5 red heifers. And you've not had them for 2,000 years. He has also purchased land on the Mount of Olives that meets the requirements for a biblical sacrifice outside of a temple. Stinson explained that a sacrifice does not necessitate a new temple. It can also be conducted at a certain height and direction. And the plot on the Mount of Olives meets those requirements. This is a big step. This is a huge sign. If we're able to do the ceremony in a year and a half or 2 years, he said, it doesn't mean that the temple is going to be built within a year, 10 years, 40 years, or 100. Let me add this. This was written a year ago, over a year ago. The ashes of the red heifer are needed in order to purify the priest who would serve in the temple, according to Numbers 19. About this time next year would be the earliest time that one of them, the 10th in history, could be sacrificed. And what he means by that, they have to be, I believe, 2 years old to meet these requirements. As a Christian, Stinson believes that it is his obligation to support the Jewish sacrifice, even if that is not what he believes himself, because the purpose of the red heifer is to let the veil be lifted. Didn't Jesus rip the veil? We can support them in having the ceremony of the red heifer. The temple being built and a daily sacrifice, weekly sacrifice, he said, we have to have a better understanding of what God is putting into place. All these things God designed as a mirror image of heaven, he said. Stinson said that he is motivated by one main purpose: to foster unity between Christians and Jews. Doesn't it say they'll all have one mind? What are they giving up? He's willing to give up his beliefs and let them have theirs. So you got this big economy snowballing down a hill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. There is no stopping in sight. How can they pay that back? He's shaking his head. He said, they what? They can't. Do you realize that it's a $300,000 per taxpayer to pay that back? You ready to write your checks? Just leave them in the plate right there on the way out. We'll contribute. It is impossible. There is no way. And I believe they know that. You have the presidency thing, and then you've got the Christian side over here. Look at us. Look this direction. What time is it? And I've showed this before. In India, China, Russia, and the cities of America, thousands of men and women are dying of starvation. The moneyed men, because they have the power to control the markets. They purchase at low rates. They obtain and they sell greatly increased prices. This means starvation to the poorest classes and will result in a civil war. There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. You know, when I put this in there, something occurred to me. Look at the four up top. India, China, Russia, and the cities of America, and I believe she's talking about the United States of America. What do they all have in common? Anybody?
Congestion.
They're what?
Congestion.
They're what? Anybody else?
Nuclear weapons.
They're superpowers. These are the big dogs in the pack, and people are starving to death. And it says here in America, because they have the power to control the markets. They purchase at low rates, and then they sell them at high rates. So the powers, the big guys, this is going to happen in the big places. Here, a snowballing economy, everything happening, and then we have the religious side. Hey, over here. There is such a push that God is not real. They say the evidence is right here, right in front. Just look at it. God is not real. And it says, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your what? Are you looking? Are you looking? My friends, have a happy Sabbath.